Hello folks, and welcome once again as always to another helping of Mr H's Hot Pot. You join me today for my first video of 2022, hopefully the first of many more to come. Now, as promised in my last video, I'm back on the trail of Fred Dibnah. Now, I've come today to Fred's hometown of Bolton, which lies today in Greater Manchester but traditionally is in Lancashire. Or I should say that I'm on the outskirts of the town of Bolton because I've come to the little picturesque village of Harwood to visit this rather charming little church behind me that Fred did a job on way back in 1980. Now, the church is called Christ Church here in Harwood, and as I say, Fred did a job on the bell tower just behind me there, and he did a lot of work on this particular church, although the clip that I'm going to show you in a moment wasn't all that long. But it's most famous, the clip that I'll be showing you, for the fact that Fred had a little bit of a rant on it way back in 1980. And it was shown to viewers in 1996 as part of the TV documentary series, The Fred Dibnah Story. So, without further ado, I'm now going to hand over to Fred Dibnah. I'll let you relive that little rant, and then we're going to take a look at some of the vandalism that was done at this church way back in 1980, and then we're going to move on and take a look at the job that he did on this church, and he did a magnificent job. I've had a quick little scout round before I started off with this video. So, I'm now going to leave you in the capable hands of Fred Dibnah, whilst I wander around this little churchyard and see if I can line up some of the shots from 1980 for you.
We arrived the other day to have a look at the bell, and like the sort of skyline in the cemetery had changed, you know. God, you know, it's about 24 gravestones been cocked over and smashed to pieces, you know. It's about £10,000 worth of damage, you know. What sort of people are these who can come around and shove over things like that that have been stood there for 100 years and just smash them to pieces, you know? They're evidently more than children, you know, for shove a stone over like that. You know, in the stages of early manhood. The thing is that they're either out of work and very unhappy and have a grudge against society as, you know, as we did know it, you know, all nice and peaceful and proper. And, you know, they just want to disrupt everything that they can bloody lay their hands on that's disruptable, you know. Why, you know, have we gone like this now? Because things were really bad in the 1930s, you know, people were actually hungry. You know, none of these people are hungry and have no bloody shoes. And yet them fellas in 1930, they didn't do it, did they? Sort of it, you know, I don't know. The thing is, they lived in a world full of bloody fear. They knew if they did the wrong thing, it'd be trouble. And now they have no fear of anything, you know. I mean, I think we've definitely gone too bloody soft. You know, without a doubt. I mean, poor little Johnny couldn't help it. You know, he's under a lot of stress and this and that other. I mean, bloody Ayatollah, if you pinch a loaf of bread there, like, bang, you know, it's the whole finger off, you know. And I think if they did a bit of that here, like, the things would be a bit straighter. I mean, Isle of Man, the vandalism there, when they had the butch, were, I believe, you know, this is only what I've read in papers, were practically non-existent. And now, you know, the wonderful bloody common market job, they've been stopped using it, you know. I can't do it no more, you know, because the common market says so. You know, it'll never get any better until they bloody fire them into line, you know, like national service or something like that. I mean, there's all these arguments against it, but the people who argue against it never come up with a bloody solution, do they? Never. You know, it just goes steadily worse day by day. So what can you do? You know, there's a lot to be said for the olden days, I say, you know, and how they did things. You were better craftsmen, you know, better at everything, really. Had more respect for property and things of that nature. Now they have no respect for nothing. You know, all they want is a life of bloody pleasure. Difficult.
Okay folks, welcome back. As Fred would have said, did you like that? Now, there's a number of things that I think is sad about that particular clip. The main one being that Fred's words ring just as true today, 42 years after he spoke them, as they did back then. Sadly, things haven't got any better with regards to desecration of churches and general disrespect for anything and everything. And I think Fred would be saddened if he saw how things have turned out today, although he probably wouldn't be surprised. Another thing that I think is sad is that a lot of the gravestones that was pushed over in that clip haven't been replaced due to the age of the graves. Simply, the church has removed the debris and cleaned it up as best as they can. It's down to the families to replace the headstones, I suppose, and probably the families are no longer around of a lot of the occupants of these graves that are behind me. The final thing that I think is sad is that Fred wouldn't be allowed to be as brutally honest, although he's right in what he said, as he has been back then. And simply, what the PC Liberal Brigade would have probably done is reined him in, or probably wouldn't have put him on the air in the first place. Anyway, that's another debate for another video. I'm now going to take a look at some of the headstones that was damaged in that clip, and you'll be able to see how the church has cleaned them up as best as they can, and then we'll move on to Fred's job itself, because it's a terrific job what he did on this bell tower. I took a little look around before I started filming, and the craftsmanship is bob on. It's as good today as it was when it was put there back in 1980. Now this is a closer look at those gravestones that was just to the right of Fred in the clip that I showed you earlier. And this is that rather prominent white cross type gravestone with the cross that was laying there. There is a piece of it still here. It seems that what the church have tried to do is any bits of headstone that had any writing on, they've kept them, and they've removed the pieces that didn't. Those top two plinths was overturned in the film, and like I say, it seems that they've been put back to try and keep the names of the people who were in this grave so that they can be read. Amazing to think that there's 42 years of dirt and grime on that gravestone there. Now this one was still standing back in 1980. It seems that that's fallen over in the 42 years since the film was made. Most of the damage that was done on that day was done towards the back end of the cemetery. I'll make my way over there now, we'll have a quick little look, and then, as I say, we'll move on to the best part of this video, which is Fred's work. And this is the area of the churchyard that suffered the brunt of the damage back in 1980. As you can see, some of the headstones are still lying where they fell on that day. Here's another one. And just as Fred couldn't comprehend why someone would come in here and do damage like that, neither can I. Here's two headstones that featured in the film. I do recognise those from some of the clips that I've been watching. I believe this one to the right here would have had a cross on it back in the day. But again, the church have removed it. Now what's amazing to think is that the people who did this damage, assuming that Fred's correct and they was in their early 20s, because I don't think kids would have done this, they wouldn't have been strong enough, I agree with him on that, then they'll now be in the 60s, approaching the 70s, and I wonder what they think of people who do similar tricks as they did back in the day. Anyway, we're now going to make our way over to the church, and the best part of this video, which is taking a look at some of Fred's work. So this is a closer look at the bell tower of Christ Church here in Harwood in Bolton, just as a plane goes by. But it was a day not too dissimilar from this when Fred was up there and he was shouting down to the vicar, explaining all the work that he was going to be doing. I think he'd been commissioned to replace the pillars, which you can see on the corners there, near the bell tower and the louvred windows. They was wood originally, and he's replaced them with stone. I believe that Fred actually made some machinery. He made a lathe so that he could shape stone, and he'd made that for when he was doing work on Bolton Town Hall. So he probably reutilised that equipment so that he could shape those columns. And he's done a good job there. You can see that they look a lot better than the wooden ones that was there originally. I'll put a clip in a moment of him talking to the vicar and explaining all the work that he was going to be doing. He also secured the cross at the top. That was a bit loose. Fred reckoned as it would be there for another 100 years after he'd done the work, and it looks just as good today as it was back then. And I think he replaced the lightning conductor. Anyway, I'll put that clip of Fred in there talking to the vicar, and we'll make our way around to the other side of the bell tower, and we'll take a look at what it looks like from that side, because there's a nice little Easter egg round there that I'll show you once I get round there.
Not like it were when we first come up. You can't swing it about now. We're rocking about 3 inches before each way.
Well, from here it looks as if you made a solid job.
Oh,
and
it's all right now. And all spires pointed and everything. Won't rain in
for another
no more.
couple hundred years, will it? It'll be there for a couple of 100 years.
Oh, easy.
Good.
But there's no way it's going to fall down no more.
Oh.
Be there when we're all dead. There's not a lot we can do with that.
What sort of a job is it, that? Is it a lengthy job?
What?
A lengthy job?
Yeah, not really.
Oh.
What worries me is what's behind, you know.
Yeah.
How the masonry is. I mean, here there's a great crack to shove my fingers in.
And as I slowly pan down the bell tower there, you can see the lower portion of it. I'm now going to make my way along this footpath here, which will take me around the other side. You can walk all the way around this church, which is good really, because some of the churches you can't walk round the backs of them, but you can get round this one. Now, Fred did mention in the film that he felt sorry for the men who built this church because it's built on very hard rock apparently, and that would have made the job 10 times harder for the men who originally built this church. As you can see, there's 1 or 2 bits of remedial work that's been done. I wonder if Fred did them, although they do look a little bit too recent to be Fred's work. This is a little curious thing on the step there, an arrow pointing in. Don't know what that's all about. And in there is where you enter into the bell tower itself. Now, as we make our way around here, we'll be able to see the marks that Fred left on this church. And there it is. That's where he would have attached his ladders so that he could get up to the top there. And just above it is the Easter egg that I was talking about. As you can see, there's a little bit of cement with the initials FD 1980 on them. So that proves that Fred Dibnah was working on this church back in 1980. There's another one of the plug holes that he's made good, and no doubt there will be others as you make your way up to the top of that. Now, as I mentioned in my other video, I have the book Fred Dibnah in His Own Words, Did You Like That? And it mentions 1 or 2 things that it doesn't mention in the documentary, so it's worth getting if anybody hasn't got that already and you're a Fred Dibnah fan. And one of the things that it mentioned in there that was when they was working on this bell tower, Fred actually found the initials that had been carved into the walls of this bell tower of the men who originally built this church. Now, walking round, I can't see those initials. That's what I'm looking for. Now, they could be inside, it didn't mention that in the book, or it could be, looks like that would have been there to scrape your boots off back in the day. It's probably not its original location, that. Well, they could be on the inside of the tower, or they could be below ground level. No, I can't see them. Unfortunately, Fred has taken that particular secret to his grave with him. But as we make our way back round where Fred left his initials, my theory is if they're not on the inside of the tower, then they may be below ground level, because Fred would have had to have dug down fairly deep to put the lightning conductor in that he installed, which is behind that little piece of sheath in there. Obviously that's there to protect it from thieves, although it does look like somebody's tried to get behind it and get the copper from it. And then it will be attached to that earthing rod there, which no doubt Fred installed. And that goes all the way up, right up to the top. Anyway, I'm now going to make my way further back, And I'll show you a clip of Fred working and climbing up this tower from this spot. And then we'll slowly wrap this video up.
Working round churches is quite nice and peaceful, you know, and at least you're doing something that it has a fair chance of surviving, like, you know, they don't knock them all down. I think some of these Victorians who made the money out of spinning mills were paving the way into heaven when they built some of these in the 1870s, you know, like they'd had the skin off the backs of all the lads, like, and, you know, we'll build a nice church. These blokes who built this particular church must have had a hell of a battle because it's made out of local flag rock, which is terrible stuff to chop. It's hard as iron.
Okay folks, well this is the final location for this video and revisiting this job that Fred did 42 years ago. And I think this is the area that the cameraman would have set up his camera back in 1980. Given the proximity of the gravestones and allowing for the fact that I'm using different equipment to what they would be using, I think this is the spot, as that is near as damn it from a screenshot that I have on my phone. And it's amazing to think that 42 years ago Fred was running up that scaffold like a young boy and enthusiastically talking about churches and the work that he did. I think he had the job of repointing it as well, and he's done a cracking job. Looking at it today, it looks just as good, as I say, as it did when he first put it up there in 1980. And I think he guaranteed it for 100 years, so that's a fair old guarantee. I've no idea who this church would contact if it doesn't last that long, but that's another matter. Anyway, I'm going to whip the camera around now and we'll slowly work towards wrapping this video up. Now, before I wrap this video up, Hot Potters, and head off back to Wigan for a worm, as we say up north, I'd just like to pay tribute to Fred Rogerson, who was the gentleman who starred in those vintage clips alongside Fred working on this church. Now, apparently Fred Rogerson was the church warden back in 1980. I've referred to him as the vicar, but he was the church warden, and he did all the dealings with the film crews and Fred and all that kind of good stuff. So I'm going to pay tribute to Fred Rogerson now, because according to a local lady that I met whilst I've been making this video, she pointed out where he's buried in this churchyard. So I think it's only fitting that we should pay tribute to him. And this is the grave of Fred Rogerson, the church warden who served this church for many years, and is rather fittingly buried here in this churchyard. And his headstone simply reads, "In loving memory of Fred Rogerson, died 20th of October 1985, age 80 years. So sadly, just 5 years after his brief cameo in Fred Dibnah's documentary, he unfortunately passed away. Now, for anybody who's thinking of coming here to Christchurch in Harwood to view some of Dibnah's work for themselves in the flesh, so to speak, after watching this video, just take a moment, if you do, to pay your respects to Fred Rogerson, whose grave is easily located in a very prominent location in this churchyard, just behind the cenotaph, to the right of the footpath as you pass through the Lich Gate. Because without Fred Rogerson, we probably wouldn't have had that footage of Fred Dibnah working on this church way back in 1980. As not only did he deal with the film crew arriving here on that day, but he was the one who actually authorised Dibbers to carry out the work on the church according to Don Orworth's book. Anyway, I'm now going to return back to the old jalopy and wrap this video up from there, as the temperature has started to plummet here in Harwood during the last half hour or so. Hey, Bayek, it's getting a little bit cold out there now, Hot Potters, I don't mind telling you. I'm glad to be back in the old jalopy for a worm. Anyway, folks, sadly that brings us to the end of today's little adventure. That'll just about do it for today. I hope you've enjoyed this video, my first of 2022, and hopefully the first of many more to come throughout the year. I've certainly enjoyed taking a look at some of Fred's work from way back in 1980 here at Christchurch in Harwood, and I hope you have as well. So, all that's left for me to say now, Hot Potters, is I'm going to get back to Wigan and head off for a warm and a cup of tea and edit this video up ready for your edification. So until the next time, from myself, Mr. H, as always, it is bye-bye for now.